In that fateful moment, as I realized Ashley was spiraling headfirst into a pit of self-destruction, there she stood, barefoot, atop the conference table, berating the spreadsheet as if it had insulted her entire lineage. It was 9:12 a.m. on a Tuesday, and our Q4 strategy meeting was in full swing. The CEO, patched in via Zoom, was frozen in an awkward pose, like a startled owl caught mid-blink. The rest of the attendees maintained a pained silence, unsure whether to intervene or hit record, immortalizing the absurdity. And me? I watched Ashley lose control with an impassive expression, knowing she had finally crashed, full force, into the very wall I had been painstakingly constructing for her, brick by oblivious brick. But let's rewind to 3 weeks prior. That day, in front of the entire team, she'd flung at me, "Honestly, I don't know why Jennifer's job is even considered full-time. My cat could automate those reports if you gave him a laptop." Nervous laughter rippled through the room, courtesy of the interns. My stomach clenched with resentment, but my face remained a mask. I gave a barely perceptible nod, like a hitman acknowledging receipt of an order. Target acquired. She remained blissfully unaware, and God, how I yearned to hear those words from her lips. Because there are 3 things you absolutely do not do to someone like me. You don't underestimate my intelligence. You don't interfere with my work. And, for the love of all that is holy, you do not give me a reason to prove your worthlessness to you. Ashley had managed to commit all 3 deadly sins. But here's the beauty of it. My revenge wouldn't be swift and brutal. No one would be publicly humiliated for a mere insult. That's amateur hour. My plan was something more refined, calculated, surgically precise. When I smiled at her that day and wished her sweet dreams, it wasn't some cheap passive-aggressive jab. It was a shot across the bow. She never bothered to understand how our automated reporting system worked. She thought clicking a Slack shortcut was the same as writing the logic behind it. I had spent years turning chaos into digestible KPIs, and she had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, brandishing quotes from Indeed and painting everything around her the colors of corporate mantras. She even dared to boast. Ashley proudly declared she had never touched a line of code in her life. She said it like it was some badge of honor, and I took it to heart. One night, I stayed late at the office, not an uncommon occurrence for me, but this time without music, without my favorite takeout, without any of the usual comforts. With cold determination, I extracted all the rollback protocols from the server logic of the weekly dashboards. I left only a pathetic skeleton, a veneer of normalcy. But when it came time to pull fresh data, an ominous silence descended. No warnings, no backup systems, not a single error, just that oppressive quiet, like a polite ghost behind your back, patiently waiting to be noticed. And then I waited. With bated breath, I didn't miss a beat. I came to work earlier than usual. I sent out my usual Monday morning digest, as always, from the generic account, even before the dashboard was supposed to populate. Scheduled delivery. Ashley wouldn't notice a thing. She never checked. She only glanced at the graph stirring. Ashley, the queen of corporate jargon, loved meetings. She liberally sprinkled in words like synergy and pipeline pressure, and we, like trained seals, nodded and pretended these brilliant ideas were originating in her head, not mine. On that fateful Monday, she burst into the conference room as usual, radiating fake energy and prophetic drivel. Click. The projector was supposed to display the usual slides, but instead, the screen displayed an ominous message, Error 4004, data source unavailable. Silence descended. I, trying not to betray a single emotion, calmly sipped my coffee, pretending to diligently take notes in my notebook. But Ashley was engulfed in genuine panic. I saw it sloshing in her eyes like a raging flood. She frantically clicked the mouse, opened and closed tabs, minimized and maximized windows, quietly whimpered, blamed the Wi-Fi, the server, even the intern who wasn't even in the room. But I wasn't going to finish her off just yet. This morning was just the beginning. Ashley had to experience firsthand what it was like to manage a machine you understand absolutely nothing about. One forgotten simoleon at a time. By noon, she was already pacing nervously in her heels, which hadn't seemed to touch the carpet since the pandemic. Every step echoed sharply in the room. Ashley slammed her huge iced coffee onto the standing desk with such force that it looked like she was squeezing child support out of it. Her status read on call. A blatant lie. Someone was frantically pinging her, me, and some poor analyst named Kevin, who'd only joined the company last Thursday and still believed that synergize meant something. She had no idea that the system she thought was broken was actually just sleeping. Ashley was blissfully unaware of the 3 invisible switches I'd installed last year when she demanded more automation but wouldn't allocate a dime, so I built it over a weekend. Quiet toggles, hidden triggers, smart homifying the office to light up if someone clapped twice. First switch, disable backups. Second, disable failover alerts. Third, manual override, 1 button, my button. The funniest part? She triggered them herself. A week ago, she moved. Ashley, with the grace of a bulldozer, relocated my files from the shared drive to her personal folder, dubbed Ashley Vision 2024. The reason? My naming conventions, you see, weren't sparkly enough. The irony was that this folder never synced. Consequently, Monday's monitoring dashboard faceplanted, devoid of any data. The genius of the plan was that no one could prove sabotage. Nor would they, because it wasn't outright sabotage. It was a boss being a boss, overruling her team's solutions, then throwing her hands up dramatically when her vision devolved into a black hole disguised in a pink blazer. By 2 p.m., Ashley had called an emergency all-hands meeting. Ashley, the PowerPoint queen, never held meetings without slides. Except this time. Just a whiteboard scribbled with marker and sweat beading traitorously through her expensive silk blouse like droplets of regret. Clearly, we've encountered a slight hiccup in our reporting system, she said, breathing heavily. The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. She made another attempt, and while Jennifer usually handles these reports, I felt it was important. We're all experts in many fields now. It came out like the crack of a starting pistol. I leaned forward, narrowing my eyes. Want me to break it down for you right now? I purred, injecting as much sweetness into my voice as sulfuric acid. Or should we wait until you get to your Ashley Vision folder? In the silence, someone's pen clicked audibly. Her gaze flicked to me, like she wanted to pounce, but instead, a fake, non-committal smile plastered itself onto her face. No need to worry. I have everything under control. Liar. Power was her fetish, and she was drowning in debt. But the real fun was just beginning, because corporate implosions don't happen overnight. They die a death of 1,000 cuts, scene by scene, each more excruciating than the last. Today was just the cold open. The next morning, everyone received a calendar invite. Automation Masterclass with Ashley, 9 a.m. sharp. I almost choked on my yogurt because she was actually going to go through with it. She was going to stand in front of 20 hardened professionals and pretend to have mastery over the very thing she mocked when I was building it. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. No slide sabotage, no Wi-Fi hacking. Too pedestrian. Too messy. I was going to do nothing. Let her teach a class she had no business teaching. Let her walk into the arena with a predator she naively mistook for a house cat. Because the truth is, when you've spent years building your system, brick by brick, line by line, and someone declares it's just a push of a button, you don't destroy them. You simply let them in. The silence in the room was deafening, utterly inappropriate for 9 in the morning. A silence that seemed to cling to the skin, inducing discomfort before a single word was uttered. Ashley stood by the screen, a smug grin plastered across her face like a politician promising the moon. She wore a blazer with gold buttons and a blouse that screamed power, but the corners of her eyes betrayed her with telltale twitches. Like she hadn't slept, like maybe she'd spent the night frantically Googling what a sequel. In the morning, after clearing her throat, she began, "Thank you for coming. Today, we're going to demystify automation together. It's not magic, and it's not some scary secret. It's simply She turned to the screen and clicked nervously on the first slide. Simply logic. Slide 1. The title, rendered in gaudy word art, Ashley Vision reporting reboot. Silence. Not a single clap. Even Kevin, the perpetual enthusiast, seemed to have forgotten his usual role as an eager audience member. She pressed on, feeling the anxiety rise. Slide 2, a screenshot of our main monitoring dashboard. So far, so good. But as soon as she clicked on the hyperlink with the promising label real-time data extraction, a menacing error 4003 popped up. She blinked in confusion. She clicked again. Same result. A tremor crept into her voice. Okay, just a minor technical hiccup. Seems like a firewall issue. We'll switch over now. I felt a smirk playing on my lips, but I willed it away. She flipped through a few more screenshots, mechanically mumbling about logic levels and time-based triggers, like she was reading from a monotonous fortune cookie in an incomprehensible language. Each time she tried to explain something, her gaze darted nervously towards me, as if I were a wild animal about to pounce. But I just waited silently, watching her squirm. And then, I sensed the abyss opening beneath her. She jabbed her finger at a flowchart, the fruit of her genius, and blurted out, "This is where the monthly data syncs with our lead funnel. Just hit refresh, and voila." Boom boom. She clicked the button triumphantly, but instead of the expected miracle, a sinister window appeared. Error. Access privileges required. Access denied. Someone coughed suspiciously from the back, trying to stifle a laugh. Her hand, frozen above the mouse, trembled. How strange. She stared at me, searching for salvation. "Jennifer, you've been here longer. Maybe you know why this isn't working?" I tilted my head nonchalantly, feigning thought. Well, since the data extraction is happening through a locked endpoint that we established back in the spring, superuser access will be required. There was uncertainty in her voice, as if she was testing the waters. Remember, we restricted it because someone managed to extract confidential data and dump it into the marketing folder. The lawyers almost had a heart attack. She blinked rapidly, like a startled fawn caught in headlights. Oh, right. Someone in the audience, unable to contain themselves, asked, "So, you don't currently have superuser access?" Ashley opened her mouth as if to say something, but stopped short, turned back to the screen, and muttered, "We'll come back to that question later." I wish I could say she recovered gracefully, admitted her mistakes, and changed the subject. But no. Ashley, like a gambler who'd gotten in too deep, raised the stakes. She launched into a rambling discourse on macro theory and dashboard empowerment. I put down my pen and notepad and just started counting the lies. I lost track at 8 when the intern next to me whispered, "Is this satire?" And then came the cherry on top of this absurdity cake. The final slide. A live demo from Ashley. She announced it with fanfare, as if it were a Super Bowl halftime show. "So, ladies and gentlemen, time to launch live automation. We'll be using sales data for. Everyone ready to go?" Ashley pointed enthusiastically at her monitor, and I almost choked on my coffee. The screen displayed the test environment, my test environment. The very one I created for the interns, filled with fictional data and playful Easter eggs. Clients with names like Neil Armstrong and Beyoncé Knowles. I held my breath as I watched her run the report. The screen erupted in a kaleidoscope of colorful charts, and at the top, in bold letters, it read, "Congratulations, you haven't broken anything yet." Ashley, elated by her success, turned to the team with a radiant smile. "See, it's as easy as pie." But no one in the room was smiling. Everyone saw the fine print beneath the triumphant headline, "Warning. This environment does not contain real data. Intended for practice purposes only. Mistakes here do not affect real reports. Good luck explaining all this to your boss." Ashley froze, as if struck by lightning. She had finally noticed. Her hand hovered over the keyboard, as if it might bite her. Silence descended upon the room once more, this time, heavy, oppressive. Slowly, with horror in her eyes, Ashley turned to me. With the same frozen, empty smile on her face, but with a pleading look, she stammered, "Jennifer, maybe you could step in and explain, well, some of these deeper, internal things?" I stood there, rooted to the spot, and coldly said, "You said you could do this in your sleep. I figured you weren't asleep right now." And then I saw the blush spread across her chest like wildfire. It quickly engulfed her neck and finally burst into a crimson blaze on her cheeks. At that moment, the room seemed to turn. But not against me, against her. The next morning, the door to her office remained closed. Not locked, but simply closed, like the entrance to a crypt. It seemed she had crawled inside to marinate in that hellish mixture of shame and spreadsheet-induced panic that she had concocted herself the night before. The silence was broken only by the occasional buzz of her cell phone, vibrating on the desk next to mine. 3 missed calls from the Chief Innovation Officer, 1 from HR, and another from someone named Mike flexing biceps. I chose not to ask. Meanwhile, the rest of the office was living its altered life. Suddenly, emails were composed in an exaggeratedly polite manner. In Slack, a ringing silence would descend the moment I started typing. Junior employees, who previously glided past as if I were part of the office decor, now offered me coffee. Even Kevin tore himself away from his monitor to whisper anxiously, "Are you okay?" I wasn't just okay, I was magnificent. While Ashley was digging herself into her fortress of fake reports and passive-aggressive emails, I had already calculated the situation 10 moves ahead. The main task was not to destroy her, but to replace her, quietly and logically, like swapping a queen on a chessboard while the old queen was busy broadcasting her own downfall to the world. I started small. I intercepted a client call she had ignored, afraid of the responsibility. I cleaned up her inflated expense reports, which included astronomical sums for candles purchased during a technical conference. Then I completely rewrote her rambling project summary, in which, and here, insert strategy here, as if it were self-evident. No one asked, no one doubted. They just gave me the green light. But the whole point is that I wasn't pulling her up. I pushed her down. And she collapsed. Just 2 days after that masterclass, I found Ashley in the kitchen. She was furiously stabbing a tea bag into a cup of lukewarm water as if demanding alimony payments from it. Her eyeliner had betrayed her, running down her face, and her stilettos had been replaced by pathetic ballet flats. Ashley in ballet flats is like watching a peacock lose its feathers, a heartbreaking sight. She didn't notice me right away, muttering to herself, trying to regain a shred of confidence, "I need to keep the room under control. They still respect me." Yes. Exactly. Then she looked up and flinched. "Jennifer," she stammered, forcing out a semblance of a smile. "Big weakness, huh?" I nodded. "Looks like it." She stirred her tea with the energy of a cornered animal. "You know," she began, "I've been thinking. Maybe we should join forces in the future? Co-lead the operational strategy. Synergy and all that." I tilted my head slightly. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Your strength?" She chuckled, like a fragile figurine. "Vision, leadership," she whispered, letting the silence thicken in the room. Even the microwave went silent, as if mesmerized. I paused before saying, "I think the team prefers functioning systems to scented candles and slogans." The spoon slipped from her hand, falling to the floor with a clang that sounded like a confession of guilt. That night, I pulled the last thread. Remember Ashley Vision 2024? Her infamous folder in Google Drive, filled with half-baked plans and motivational quotes in pastel colors. I had requested editing access several weeks ago. She hadn't even noticed. Probably thought I was just cleaning up her mess, which, in a way, I was. But I added a new file, draft quarterly review, personal notes. It looked like a regular memo for the CEO. Harmless, clean, except for the last paragraph. I remained deeply concerned about Ashley's technical competence and judgment. As more and more errors emerge. In the report, I noted with concern that the team's confidence in leadership was steadily declining. Recommendation: consider a transition plan before the second quarter to maintain stability. I left this record open, not sent, not even highlighted. Just gave her the opportunity to find it. And she found it. At 8:17 a.m. the next day, she stormed into the office, face flushed, eyes blazing. "Did you write this?" she hissed, shoving her phone screen right in my face. I didn't even raise an eyebrow. "I write a lot of things," I replied calmly. "Want me to automate this too?" She froze, mouth gaping helplessly, like a fish thrown onto the shore in her corporate suit. And from that day on, she stopped calling me sweetheart. The following week was a real lesson in quiet warfare. Ashley didn't blow up the situation. She turned to passive aggression, as slippery as mayonnaise left in the summer sun. Still smiling, still talking, but slowly poisoning the atmosphere in every room we were in. She stopped inviting me to leadership meetings. The previously subdued bickering in the chat was replaced by barely perceptible, tentative jabs, and even in those, she managed to insert accusations. She even tried to resurrect a forgotten collaboration project from 2019, burdening me with meaningless tasks like analyzing outdated customer churn models that she herself had rejected 3 or 4 years ago. It was desperate. Loudly, but in a hushed tone. And I allowed it, because I was closely monitoring another correspondence, one that truly mattered. Subject: performance review cycle, draft reviews, deadline, E. Within that email chain was a phrase that would determine her fate: please include specific examples of leadership, problem-solving, and cross-functional collaboration. Perfect. Because I had evidence. Real, rock-solid evidence. The very script I wrote to replace our perpetually failing conveyor belt not only fixed the problem but also logged every action. Fragments related to her actions flashed through my mind. Who tried to fix what? Who resorted to what in desperation? She sincerely believed she was making adjustments when she uploaded an incompatible CSV file at the ungodly hour of 11:42 p.m. And the next morning, without batting an eye, she blamed the tool, portraying herself as a victim to the entire team. I attached the logs to my self-assessment. No extra words, just cold, hard facts, screenshots, timestamps. Even the script couldn't resist a sarcastic comment, // attempted to redirect input logic via Ashley Vision Test 2, predictable result, chaos. But it was just a jab, not a fatal blow. The fatal shot came during a one-on-one meeting I didn't expect. Friday, 4:30 p.m. I was already packing up to go home when the CEO appeared in the doorway. He was holding a printout of one of my reports. He looked tired but with a strange satisfaction, as if he had finally found the missing piece of a puzzle he didn't even know existed. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, and there was an unusual softness in his voice. "Of course," I replied, and I meant it sincerely. He sat down, crossed his legs, and held up the report. Is it true that you rewrote this entire forecasting package yourself?" "Alone?" he asked, with undisguised surprise in his voice. I simply nodded in response. He lowered the papers to the table, and it became clear that the old version, which Ashley had referenced in her weekly strategy, simply lacked critical filters for analyzing customer churn. "Yes," I confirmed. He nodded slowly again, as if processing what he had heard, and then suddenly asked, "Did she know about this?" At that moment, I looked him straight in the eye. No hint of gloating, just a statement of fact: she didn't ask. No more words were needed. He exhaled loudly, as if someone had finally released his lungs from captivity. "We're planning a small restructuring," he said, possibly reallocating responsibilities at the director level. "Just so you're aware." The translation was obvious: Ashley was done. I didn't say anything in response. I just smiled slightly, softly and sincerely. No hint of triumph, just an awareness of inevitability. But I wasn't finished yet. That evening, I allowed myself something I hadn't done in months. I ordered takeout from the same Thai restaurant that Ashley had once scornfully dismissed as too spicy, not suitable for executives. I opened a bottle of beer and wrote her an email. Subject line, automation training notes. Ashley, hi. Thanks again for the opportunity to co-lead the automation workshop last week. I decided to compile a glossary of key terms. I hope you find it helpful in the future. Best regards, Jennifer. The glossary was extensive. 53 terms, from regression logic to silent failure. The last entry stuck in my mind: leadership is the art of understanding what you don't know and not insulting those who do. There was no reply. And the following Monday, her office was empty. No announcements from HR. No farewell note written in a trembling hand. No awkward sheet cake in the break room. Just silence, thick and ominous, like in a theater before the lights go down and the curtain rises. Ashley's glass office stood in silence, an unfinished cup of coffee with a lipstick stain, a crooked visualization board pinned above the desk with the audacious inscription, "Talk goals. Solve problems. Kill the day." Her chair still held warmth, but no one dared to touch it. As if the ghost of her outsized ego hovered in the air, ready to unleash a non-disclosure lawsuit on anyone who dared to disturb the peace. At first, everyone tiptoed around, but gradually the tension eased. Voices returned, jokes reappeared. Even the intern stopped whispering, and Kevin seemed to stop sweating profusely. And me? I just lay low, waiting for the next domino to fall. Ashley may have vacated her throne, but her dirty footprints were imprinted on all the chaos she left behind. The quarterly report to the board of directors was looming. Ashley had promised crystal clear data and flawless performance, but she had delivered on none of it. Worse, she brazenly falsified client SLA deadlines to embellish Q2 results. Such machinations start with innocent lies and end under the SEC's microscope if you touch the wrong wire. And guess who lucked out inheriting this presentation? Officially, of course, nobody said anything, but as the best expert on these ill-fated dashboards, I was asked to support Greg, the interim manager. The same guy who once mistook a pie chart for a donut, calling it deliciously actionable. Well, I did what I always do. I created a presentation that was impeccable, bulletproof, untouchable. But this time I added something special. Slide 14. Hidden deep within the application. Title: Legacy Discrepancies and Historical Adjustments. At first glance, just a neat graph showing adjusted SLA metrics for the last 3 quarters. Hover over a specific row, Q2, and a tooltip appears. Note: source data from Ashley Vision folders. Manual overrides detected. Audit log missing. I left it in plain sight. No accusations, no drama, just cold, hard facts. The board meeting arrived. I stood in the corner, unobtrusive, just observing. Greg was mumbling something. His blandness played to his advantage. And then, finally, it was the application's turn. Slide 14. The VP squinted, as if looking for something hidden. Hold on. Are we talking about manual data adjustments? Greg froze, as if doused with ice water. Beads of sweat popped out on his forehead. He turned sharply toward me, like a beaten dog hearing its name in a stream of abuse. I stepped forward, maintaining my composure. During our review, we found discrepancies in the SLA compliance reports. It turned out that manual edits had been made, unsupported by any documentation. We have already fixed this problem and implemented a control system. Another board member leaned forward, his gaze sharp as a razor. Who made these edits? Greg shot me a guilty look. I remained silent. The tooltip was visible to everyone. Ashley's name wasn't spoken aloud, but it hung in the air like electrified dust. After the meeting, the CFO approached me, his voice subdued but firm. We need a full audit of all her previous projects, he said. Prudent, but thorough. Can you lead this effort? I nodded, looking him straight in the eye. Already started. And that was the absolute truth. Because the one thing Ashley never considered, what I've always despised about machine memory. How they cling to fingerprints, even when you're desperately trying to erase them from the screen. And now, I'm not just a woman she recklessly underestimated. I'm a ghost haunting her system. And I was just beginning my hunt. The deeper I delved, the more deafening her silence became. Within the bowels of Ashley Vision 2024, buried under tons of cloyingly sweet PDFs and droning candid mantras, I stumbled upon what she had sworn to keep hidden from prying eyes. A worn file labeled Client Adjustments. Internal use only. On the surface, just an ordinary table, but as soon as I ran a scan for discrepancies against our database, its dirty underbelly was revealed. 32 mismatches. Most were minor, penny-ante errors. A couple were just typos. But five screamed fraud. Clients were billed for services they never saw. Reports supposedly sent were gaping voids of attachments. SLA deadlines were slashed by 2 weeks, just like that, out of thin air. To get a performance bonus, Ashley was ready for anything. And her name was emblazoned on every fabricated edit. She didn't just appear competent, she artfully faked value, operating quietly and discreetly. I, in turn, methodically documented her every step. Screenshots of file history logs, timestamps for each version, everything was captured. I copied the folder structure, archived it, encrypted it, and sent it to myself from an anonymous Proton account. Just in case anyone thought my audit was too zealous. But I wasn't going to strike a crushing blow just yet. Not yet. First, I scheduled a cross-functional sync with the legal and finance departments, disguising it as a data continuity review. On the appointed day, I arrived with a printout of the report in an ordinary black folder. No ostentatious drama, no highlighter marks, just cold numbers, just naked truth. I silently watched as the head of compliance read the report while I demonstrated the sanitized dashboard feed. On the 5th page, she stopped, her eyebrows rising. "Wait," she said, looking at me with confusion. "This directly contradicts Ashley's reporting for Q1. Quarter?" She asked again, and I nodded almost imperceptibly. "That's why I paid attention to it," she drawled after a long pause. Silence fell again. So, she did it alone? It was at that moment that I uttered the phrase that changed my career. "I don't know, but she signed the document." There were no more questions. Nor were they needed. After that, the flywheel of events spun at breakneck speed. Whispers started, closed-door meetings began. In the morning, the door to the legal department was locked for a long 4 hours. When it finally opened, our general counsel looked like he had aged 10 years. By Thursday, a massive reorganization was announced. "We are restructuring, promoting proven performers, recognizing contributions." And just like that, the company stopped calling our systems Ashley's tool panels. Now it was the Jennifer mechanism. I didn't change the signs, I didn't redo her office. I left it empty, untouched, because some ghosts deserve a room where their echoes will sound forever. Now, when interns ask how I got promoted, I just smile mysteriously and answer, hard work. But the truth is, she once said that she could do my job in her sleep. I left her in the arms of Morpheus, unaware that while she dreamed, her world would collapse. When she opened her eyes, there was no trace of her kingdom left.